Nevada is a grassroots nonprofit organization that advocates for policies empowering everyday Asian Pacific Islander Nevadans. Nevada is home to a growing APIA community, accounting for 1 in 10 voters. We are One APIA Nevada. Concili Incorporated is Nevada's premier Democratic campaign firm, fighting for progressive issues and candidates for over a decade, and proud sponsor of Battle-Born Progress.
This episode of Out in Front brought to you by
Concili Inc., Nevada State Education Association, One APIA Nevada, Silver State Voices, and Stefan and Marta Schmidt, as well as our episode sponsors, Save Lives Nevada and Washoe Education Association.
Annette, my name is Annette Magnus, and I'm the Executive Director of Battle-Born Progress. So excited to be with you tonight. Happy Nevada Public Lands Week. It's also National Public Lands Day on Saturday. Governor Sisolak will be declaring it Nevada Public Lands Day, as he has since 2017. And we are so excited to have another public land celebration upon us. We are going to have a huge celebration on Saturday. Allison is going to be with us later to tell you all about that. But for those who may have to hop early, this Saturday, we are having a giant celebration out at Desert Breeze Park, right off the Twain entrance of Desert Breeze Park. We're going to have games, prizes, free food, free stickers. We're doing a park cleanup with Get Outdoors Nevada, so you are not going to want to miss it. It's sponsored by Commissioner Justin Jones. We will put a link in the chat to all of that information, and Allison on our team here at BBP will join us later in this segment to talk more about Nevada Public Lands Day on Saturday. We're also going to have a giant press event with so many amazing leaders here in Nevada. Congresswoman Dina Titus will be out there to talk about Avikwame. We'll have Congresswoman Susie Lee, Assemblywoman Brittany Miller, a representative from Senator Jackie Rosen's office, of course, Commissioner Jones, who is sponsoring the whole event, and my favorite intern, former intern, Commissioner Michael Naft. So it's going to be a great celebration. You do not want to miss it. 9 to noon on Saturday at Desert Breeze Park here in Vegas. And the press conference will be televised statewide on all of our social media pages, so make sure you tune in. I want to welcome tonight's guests to talk about Nevada public lands and all of the wonderful things that are happening on Nevada's public lands. So we have a few returning guests and some new friends joining us on Out in Front tonight. So Russell Kuhlman, he is the Executive Director of the Nevada Wildlife Federation. Alan O'Neill, who is one of my favorites. He just was given a big award at Celebrate Progress by us. He is the former superintendent of Lake Mead Recreational Area and the guru of Avikwame, our new potential national monument. We also have Dwight George. He is with our favorite org, the Native Voters Alliance of Nevada. And then Angie Bullitt, she is with the Southern Nevada she is the Southern Nevada District Manager of the Bureau of Land Management. So we're so excited to talk to her about all of the great things and all of the hard work that BLM is doing in Southern Nevada. So welcome all. We're thrilled to have you. Thank you for being here. Russell, I want to bring you in first. Welcome back to the show. Happy Nevada Public Lands Day week. What has happened in the past year that Nevadans should be celebrating this Public Lands Day?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say personally, my biggest celebration or cause for celebration was the Desert National Wildlife Refuge. There was some interest from the military that borders that area in expanding their training area, which would have eliminated access to a large part of the current Desert National Wildlife Refuge that is open to the public. And a bunch of Nevada organizations were able to form a coalition and work with our federal delegation and was able to stop the military from expanding their training area. And unfortunately, I don't think it was, I think that's probably something that we're going to have to keep fighting in the future. But certainly we were able to, come together, work together, and keep that area open for the public for at least one more year. And, that was, in my opinion, the biggest win for public lands in Nevada over the past year or so. But, for something that you can always be proud of in our state, we have the most public land outside of Alaska. So you could celebrate that every year too. We're 80% plus public land. So that's always a reason to celebrate Nevada.
Absolutely. Dwight, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to finally get to meet you. Taylor has said such amazing things about you. So welcome. Tell us what you're going to celebrate this Public Lands Day and why this is such an important date for you.
Thank you. It's nice to meet you too. It's good to be here. I'm Dwight George. I'm with the NVAN Native Voter Alliance Nevada, and I am also a member of the Fallon Paiute Shoshone tribe. And I'm going to celebrate public lands by actually being on the land, which I think is pretty important for people to actually develop that relationship to it in order to feel that kind of empathy and that kind of, protection that you want to put out there, that kind of closeness to it. So I encourage people also to do that, also to kind of join in and enjoy what we've been provided and what we've been lucky enough to be able to celebrate today.
Absolutely. I love that. I think that's so important on Public Lands Day. Russell and I were talking about him going hunting this weekend, and I always love getting out on our public lands all the time, but especially during Public Lands Day. So I think that's awesome. Angie, I want to bring you in. Welcome to the show. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all of the work that the Bureau of Land Management does. Tell us how you plan to celebrate Public Lands Day and some of the good works that are happening over at the BLM.
Well, for me, Public Lands Day is kind of a personal thing. My husband and I grew up in BLM, and we have a great love for the agency and public lands because we both have been able to have the majority of our federal careers on our traditional lands. I'm a member of the Kaibab Band of Paiute Indians that's on the border of northern Arizona and southern Utah. And so my traditional land covers places like the Grand Canyon, Zion National Park, Bryce Canyon National Park, the Dixie National Forest, and the Arizona Strip, BLM, Color Country, BLM. And so for us, we started this tradition with my little nephews and my daughters long ago. We would go out and we would recreate on public lands, but we would select the places that needed some love. So we would take them out and we'd make them pick up trash and even the micro trash. And so they thought they were doing a great deed. And so we still do that today. So we spend our Public Lands Day picking up trash. And it's really grown into a big family tradition because, our family's grown, and it's a simple way for us to create fun for them, but it's really a worthwhile cause for public lands in general. So that's what we do. As far as what BLM is doing, we have over the last weekend, we had a group of 34 volunteers that went out to Rainbow Gardens, and they picked up trash, tons and tons of trash. But I'll say that most of my employees, all of their roles are to conserve our public lands. And we do so many things here in BLM, but we do have orchestrated volunteer events for Public Lands Day. Red Rock is going to have one. The Las Vegas field office is going to go to Logandale Trails this coming weekend, and they'll be working out there. So there's a lot going on for us.
Absolutely. And for those at home, we actually have a website built for Nevada Public Lands Day, which all of these fabulous events that Angie is speaking about is featured on all across the state. So we'll put the link for our Public Lands Day website in the chat. So this way y'all can see what's going on all across Nevada for both. Again, it's National Public Lands Day, but it's also Nevada Public Lands Day. And we are also having a designated Public Lands Day here in Clark County as well, officially by the County Commission. So we're very proud of that work that we've done over the years to honor our public lands, as Angie is talking about. Angie, we'll come right back to you in just a second. Alan, I want to bring you in. I know you have also a near and dear love of our public lands, like all of us do. So talk to us about what's so special for you this Public Lands Day and what you're celebrating. Oh, come off mute, Alan.
Okay, I'll be out at Sloan Canyon, doing some cleanup, and also there's a wonderful effort to create a kind of a new picnic area at the Sloan Trailhead area, at least prepare the ground and do the work before the permanent picnic area will go in. So we're kind of excited about that. And connecting to Public Lands Day Sunday, we have a wonderful hike that our Vicwame Coalition is doing down at Hyco Springs, which is one of the really spectacular canyon within the proposed Vicwame National Monument. So Lisa Ortega and I will be taking the group down and talking about importance of the spring resources and some of the cultural resources that are present in Hyco Springs. Also, I do have a love affair with the public lands. And one of the things that I think we're so fortunate here is to have so much surrounding us. Part of my family just moved back from Texas, and I used to really kind of dread going back there for a trip because there really wasn't much to do. Less than 2% of Texas is public lands. And so, 96% is private land. So I think we need to realize how lucky we are. I've been working in public land issues for 56 years, and I feel real blessed that we have so many hidden gems so close. My one concern is that people tend to go to the same places all the time rather than spreading that use out on the public lands. I just documented 80 areas that I think hidden gems within a several hour drive of Las Vegas that I think are just outstanding resources and incredible diversity. So trying to encourage people to make that connection to the public lands and not just go to the same place all the time. As beautiful they are as the Red Rock Canyon Scenic Loop and the Mount Charleston Loop, they tend to get crowded, and yet we have other very spectacular landscapes out there that are not overused, not getting a lot of use. Yet you can wander around for hours on the places like the Bowl of Fire, Pinto Valley, a short walk in, and you have it to yourself. So my message is I think we're really blessed, and we need to educate the community about how they access and where these special resources are.
Alan, I want to talk a little bit about your history with public lands, because you've worked on our public lands for a long time. At Celebrate Progress, you told a beautiful story about how your mother inspired you to get out on our public lands and explore them and appreciate them and love them. So I want to talk about Lake Mead, because that is where you've done a tremendous amount of work. And obviously, Lake Mead has been in the news because of the drought in the Colorado River and the significant toll that the drought has taken on the Colorado River. So as Lake Mead continues to drop, we are more inclined than ever to protect and preserve our public lands and our waters and all of these important, frankly, sacred spaces that we have the privilege to live on. So how do you suggest we do that, especially for places like Lake Mead?
Well, Lake Mead is 1.5 million acres. So it's as big as Lake Mead and Lake Mojave are the two major lakes within it. They're only 12% of the recreation area. So, it breaks my heart to go out there and see the water levels, dropped almost 170 feet since I retired. And to go out and see on a Saturday that the lake is not bustling with activity breaks my heart. We have one boat launching ramp open at Lake Mead, and several of the marinas don't even have a boat launching ramp open. So it's getting a lot of the national attention. But a lot of the use is transferring down to Lake Mojave and to the land-based resource. Lake Mead's got 900 miles of backcountry roads, some of the most spectacular landscapes you're able to access. So we are seeing a shift a little bit to more land-based, but that doesn't take away from the fact that for the boating public and the recreating public that likes the water sports, there are major issues at Lake Mead. And even though it's only 28% full, it's still a large lake. So if you're able to access the lake, you can still have a good experience. But I think the work to provide further protection for some of these areas that I think is going to be really important as we look at our growing population. We're going to look at the impacts of climate change and the really positive benefits that protected areas provide for addressing some of our climate change challenges.
Absolutely. Dwight, I want to bring you back in. So my next question for you is about your feelings on Public Lands Day, and if you feel like Public Lands Day is beneficial to sacred tribal landscapes, which all of us in Nevada live on, and do you feel that both National Public Lands Day and Nevada Public Lands Day can and should do more to incorporate Indigenous perspective and voices, not just outdoor recreation?
Yeah, so even it's kind of tricky because even the name public lands is interesting to a lot of Indigenous communities, because public lands, it should still be acknowledged they're still stolen lands. It's still a part of things that have been taken away from us and given to something else or another kind of entity. And the problem with that is that a lot of the times it can be taking away these sacred sites and taking away these things that we hold so close to ourselves and turned into something that it should not be. And even then the protection of it isn't guaranteed. We still are fighting for to get other sacred sites protected and things like that. So public lands is a tricky subject for some of us, but I definitely feel like it is the land is as sacred to us as anything. It's very important to us. It's extremely a big part of our culture. And I feel like people should be able to celebrate that and people should be able to respect that. But the celebration also depends on the person. There have been some people that have taken advantage of these sites and these places without caring for what they mean to the people that have always been around them and always been with them. So I do believe that there are bad ways to celebrate. You got to always be aware of where you're at and what it means to the people that are there. You always have to kind of be aware of the things that you are doing, because it doesn't just affect the land, it affects the people that live there. So another thing is that with the Public Lands Day, another interesting part of it is that there is kind of a barrier to people of color still with outdoor events and with kind of being able to celebrate outdoors. Just, I believe last month, the I don't know what he is. He's either the founder or like one of the big investors of Burning Man, said that the reason that there is not a big diversity factor in their event is because Black people don't camp, which just isn't true. It isn't true. It's just ignorance like that continues to propel this kind of push away from people like me, and it needs to be addressed. It needs to be stopped, and it needs to be added to the kind of celebration that people are doing. It needs to be added to this this thing that people want to do. People want to be outdoors, people want to be within the land, but there is still a wariness from some people because they've been told that they don't belong. So there definitely needs to be more welcoming. There definitely needs to be more of a push to include everyone in a good way and in a proper way that will still protect and preserve the land and what you're on, and yet be able to actually appreciate it. Because I believe that closeness is what will give you the true appreciation of it.
For people who are watching at home, Dwight, and this may be a dumb question, but I want to make sure that our viewers really understand how to properly appreciate the land that they're on and understand the history of the land that they're on. What are some good tools and ways that people can educate themselves about the history of the land that we live in, whether it's in the Southwest or whether it's Nevada? How do we make sure that we're an educated population about the people who lived here first?
That is on the person to do that kind of work, to do that kind of research. And it starts with actually looking for sources. You can do something as easy as going on the internet. You can look at anything, look up anything, just kind of research the area, look and see if there's any tribes that have been around that land or have any kind of claim to that land, and see what they have to say about it. You could go to even call, I believe, any tribal office directly, and they'll tell you about the sacred sites there, or anything that they feel like is in that kind of area of protection. So you definitely need to talk, and you need to listen. Most importantly, you need to learn what people have to say about where you're at, because it's not your place that you're going to visit. Some people have the mindset that wherever you go to is yours for that moment, when it's not true. It's definitely affecting more people than you with your good time. So just do the research, listen to the people that you talk to that try to educate you on things, and don't get offended or don't be hurt if someone says you can't do something, because there are things that some people can't do, and that needs to be accepted, and it needs to be listened to, and it needs to actually be respected.
And I believe, Dwight, there's actually a really great resource. I think Taylor has talked about it before on the NVAN website, where people can go and look up the 27 different federally recognized tribes here in Nevada. And I know there's other resources that exist out there for folks to do that research and to become educated about the land that they're living on. So we'll make sure that we put the NVAN website in the chat, and always make sure that you're supporting NVAN. They do amazing work. They're one of our favorite partners all across Nevada, and Dwight is part of that amazing organization. So Dwight, we're going to come back to you in just a few minutes, but we will put the NVAN website in the chat so folks can do their homework on this Public Lands Day, because educating yourselves is as important as celebrating. So we want to make sure that you can do that easily. Angie, I want to come back to you. What efforts over the last year or so have the Bureau of Land Management done to protect and preserve our natural spaces across Nevada? And what are some of the things that, you want to highlight that BLM is working on right now?
Well, I'll tell you, my office, the Southern Nevada District, is a very large office. So we do a lot of work here. We have the largest law enforcement in the Bureau. We have the largest lands program in the Bureau. We have the largest fuels program. So we have a lot of work going on. So like I said previously, all of my employees play a role in conserving our public lands and working on it daily. We have issued permits for large-scale events annually, and that's a part of the permitting. And that part of the permitting requires cleaning up after events. So we make sure that our permittees do that for us, and that gets done. I have a person who's also dedicated to desert cleanups. And this is very unique for BLM. He cleans up homeless encampments, And if you have a neighborhood that has a BLM parcel in it, he's there cleaning up, throwing away furniture, boxes, trash. We get calls like that all of the time that, in neighborhoods, there'll be abandoned debris there. And so he'll go and he'll clean those up. So that's a constant for us too. And like I said, we have this large group, and this is what's wonderful about being in Las Vegas, is that we have this great group of volunteers to draw from that really love public lands, and like Ellen, who goes out to Sloan a lot and to Walking Box Ranch, but that love our public lands and are willing to spend time out there and to help us out. So there's a lot of things that we've done every year, every day, and I'm very proud of that our public is willing to help us out that way.
Absolutely, Angie. And one of the things that I wanted to ask you about, because, and this is something that really bothers me, is we've seen over the years a lot of anti-public lands, anti-BLM rhetoric out there. And it's something that I have fought back about against, my organization has fought back against, because I believe that the work you all do is so important to protecting the land that we all love and enjoy. And frankly, the reason I was born and raised here, but the reason I still live in Nevada is because of our beautiful open spaces and because of the public lands that are so important and so sacred that we have the privilege to live on. So in your opinion, what are some of the misconceptions about the work that the Bureau of Land Management, the BLM, does in Nevada, and the work that you all do?
I've been here in this office for 2 years in Southern Nevada, but I have family ties here. My great-grandmother came from the Pahranagat Valley area, and my husband has, his family came from the Las Vegas Paiute people here. And, I think there is so much with our public lands that people truly, truly care about, that are important for everybody in the whole state. And, there's so much unique things about Southern Nevada that people just don't realize. And frankly, when I came here, I saw the Las Vegas Valley, but that is not what Southern Nevada is only. I have so many places now that truly are important to all of America and the world, and it's an important place to be. And so, for misconceptions, I would say people and organizations have a tendency, I think, to think that public lands in general is wasteland, but truly it is not. It's to me it's wondrous. It's wondrous that it's here for everybody to enjoy. And I think that's the biggest misconception, that it's wasteland, and when you look at the desert and you look at the beauty, you don't see anything like that in the world. You see these huge Joshua trees out, and with Alan's background, and you see those Joshua trees, and you see that beautiful mountain landscapes in the back when you're out and about, and it's like, and the sunsets, my goodness, the desert is beautiful.
My favorite place. I've had the privilege to go all over the world, Angie, but my heart, well, I've even got my shirt on, my Home Means Nevada shirt. Oh, yeah. So I my little Nevada earrings for Public Lands Day. So of all the places I've had the privilege to go, I always come back to the desert because it's so special and wonderful here.
It is. It truly is.
All right, Russell, I want to bring you back in. On that note, since Nevada has started celebrating Public Lands Day since 2017, when the Nevada legislature passed that, What has it done to bring attention and awareness to wildlife protection issues? I know we've worked on some cool stuff together over the past couple of years as well.
Yeah, I mean, specifically here in Nevada, when I think public lands, I think wildlife, and I think wildlife, I think public lands. With our state being over 80%, I can't think of an animal off the top of my head that is specifically their habitat is just private land. I think every wildlife here in the state utilizes public lands in some form or another. And, you mentioned some of the work that we've been able to do at that landscape level that's benefited wildlife. The first thing that comes to mind is the sagebrush conservation framework, which this is kind of a little bit backstory, but that was specifically wanting to be a wildlife corridor for mule deer and antelope. And as we started working through it, we realized that the sagebrush ecosystem is also not doing very well. And once you cover the landscape or public lands, a lot of wildlife benefit from that. And we were able to identify some wildlife corridors, but also sage grouse populations and some of their core habitat. And when we worked with the governor these past 2 years or so, and we got that executive order through, the title says sagebrush ecosystem framework, but that's going to benefit a whole bunch of wildlife, everything from the large mammals down to our reptiles. And so it's hard to really separate wildlife protections with public lands protections or landscape protections here in the state, because a lot of times they're one and the same. And I think it was not epiphany, but a really good feedback that we got when we did work on that is at that landscape level protections, you're saving more than just the landscape. And I think of Abiquame as well. There's some bighorn sheep in that area too that are going to benefit if we can get this across the finish line and designate it a national monument. And that's kind of how I view protecting both wildlife and our land here in the state is kind of they both go hand in hand.
Thank you for that. Russell, sticking with you, I want to talk about oil and gas leasing because Senator Cortez Masto in particular has been a real champion on this issue for us over the years, especially up in the Ruby Mountains in that area. So oil and gas leasing on federal lands has been a problem that the Biden administration has been trying to deal with and rein in. I know we've dealt with that here. Like I said, our Senator Catherine Cortez Masto has done work on that. We've also done some work on it at the legislative level. So what is the impact to wildlife on oil and gas leasing, and why is it so problematic, and why do people need to be paying attention to that?
So I kind of have two answers for this question. One is when active development like oil derricks and wells go on to leased public land. And one of the things that we're always keeping an eye on during the comment periods when all these lease sales go online every 4 times a year is, are they leasing in areas that are core habitat or priority habitat for sage grouse? And are they leasing in areas that conflict with migration corridors for wildlife? And, if they do, that's where we really try to focus and, provide comments that that's probably not the best idea. Again, a report just came out in the last day or so that says across the West, we're losing about 1 million acres of sagebrush habitat every year. And we only have about 35 million acres throughout the West. And we've already lost about half of our historic range. And the half that we still have is categorized as degraded. So that landscape is not doing too well. And when you put development on top of that through oil and gas leasing in these vital corridors or sage grouse areas or wildlife habitat areas, you're just adding one more hurdle for these species to survive against. And, organizations like the Nevada Wildlife Federation, that's where we really try to be that voice for wildlife and make sure that, they can still get to A and B safely. And especially here in Nevada, we don't have a whole lot of oil and gas in the ground, but yet we still have a lot of leasing that goes on. From 2011 to 2020, about 5 million acres were leased by oil and gas companies, but never developed. And a really good question that I get asked from time to time is, well, if they're not developing on those areas, then why is it harmful for wildlife if no development is on there and they just lease it? And my answer to that is, and Angie, correct me if I'm wrong if you know this, but all the information that I've been told is when the BLM leases land for energy development, they essentially don't prioritize that parcel of land for wildlife improvement projects, habitat rehabilitation projects, fence removals, things like that. And we're at a point now, especially at our sagebrush ecosystem, where we don't have any buffer, I don't think, anymore to not prioritize every piece of sagebrush land that there is out there, because again, we're going through it pretty quick. And when you couple that with the drought and wildfires, it's just not a good recipe for the long-term health of our landscape.
Russell, I want to actually follow up on that. And Angie, please pop in if you want to add to this. We were just talking about our love for the desert and these desert landscapes that exist all across Nevada, and it's different types of desert, right? Most people look at sagebrush and they think, oh, well, that's just a weed. They don't understand that the desert is a whole ecosystem. And for things like the desert tortoise to survive, or other creatures like the sage grouse to survive, it has to have certain elements thriving. And so talk to us about why sagebrush in particular is an important piece of our ecosystem, and what it does and why we need to protect it.
Yeah, and I've gotten similar feedback too. I know when we got that executive order passed, some of the comments that I received was, I see sagebrush every time. We have plenty of it. Why do we need to protect it? And kind of going to your point, it's the sagebrush ecosystem that we really need to focus on, that large landscape level view. And something that might be important to note, you might drive through sagebrush in the middle of the summer and not see anything out roaming around, but you go through that same habitat in the winter and there might be elk on the landscape, there might be mule deer, antelope, and a lot of big game animals or large mammals, use that seasonally. They're up in the mountaintops eating green grass in the summer where it's a little cooler, but in the winter, snow a lot of times forces them down to these flat areas that is primarily sagebrush. And so just because you don't see animals on the landscape every time you drive by, doesn't mean that land is not being productive. So I think that's something that really opened my eyes back when I was studying landscape level conservation. Is it doesn't need to be productive 365 days a year. A couple months here or there still is important enough for a whole species or a population to survive to the next year.
Angie, anything you want to add on that about these ecosystems like sagebrush that we need to be protecting?
Like you said, the ecosystem they're all connected. Every plant, the streams, the springs, everything is connected. So when we do analysis, that is one of the things that we consider is everything from wildlife and vegetation and the soils, and we consider all of that during our analysis, and it's really interconnected. This desert ecosystem, especially, it's very dependent on each other.
Absolutely. Alan, I want to come back to you. We are in the process of working together to celebrate a really important piece of land at the very southern tip of Nevada, down by Laughlin and Searchlight, a special place we're hoping called Aviquame, which would be our new national monument. It's actually the picture that is behind you, the beautiful Joshua Tree Forest, which is sacred and important and one of the oldest it is the oldest in Nevada. So educate us on Aviquame. I'm so excited to talk about Aviquame again. It's one of my favorite places in Nevada, and talk to us about the work being done to hopefully designate this as a national monument, either through Congresswoman Titus's bill or through an executive order from the president.
Thanks, Annette. Well, yeah, I have a real connection to this landscape, and that dates back when I was superintendent at Lake Mead National Recreation Area in the 1990s. And we saw what was happening that was disrespectful to the landscape. For example, Christmas tree paths. There were like 860 trees decorated with ornaments and such. And it wasn't just Christmas decoration. Some of it was totally offensive, bras and panties and ridiculous things. And so it brought to attention that we're really not treating this land for the sacred values that exist. So we started a process of getting Spirit Mountain itself designated as a traditional cultural property. That was a new category in the National Historic Preservation Act that really dealt with the significance of these landscapes from a spiritual and sacred standpoint. And we were successful in getting Spirit Mountain itself, but the tribes told us during the process that it's not just a mountain, it's associated landscape. These are the ancestral lands for 10 human-speaking tribes, plus important to the Hopi and the Chemehuevi Paiute and other tribes. And so we looked at, we've been fighting some bad industrial level projects down there, and finally we had the opportunity once one of the projects was defeated to look at a different way of perhaps managing that landscape. A lot of work's been done on the California side over the last several decades with the California Desert Protection Act and other efforts, Mojave National Preserve, Castle Mountains National Monument, Mojave Trails National Monument. But the exact same habitat on the Nevada side was not afforded permanent protection. There were pieces of it with the Wheat Thump Wilderness and the South McCullough, but not all of that landscape had protective provisions. In fact, a large part had no protective provisions, about 63,000 acres. So what we have here is not only an important cultural landscape, but also an incredibly important ecological landscape. And when you put on that things like dark night sky, natural quiet, the visual resource, the recreational resource, we have an incredible opportunity here to provide that connective tissue, which I call it, between what's been done on the California side and Lake Mead National Recreation Area. Why is that important? Because you're connecting already protected areas through the monument designation. And when you're looking at the impacts of climate change, having a larger protected, connected, integrated, managed landscape allows you an opportunity to do some special things in dealing with climate change. That monument proposal does have the elevation gradients, the migration corridors, the little niches like the natural springs that will allow species to move within that larger connected landscape as we see perhaps rising temperatures and decreasing rainfall, opportunity to move there. And so by designating this a national monument, you've essentially connected the Mojave Desert to the Colorado Plateau through Lake Mead. And that is incredibly important in terms of future research and looking at the impacts of climate change. I mean, this provides a carbon sink and all different things. And I think it's important to note that renewable energy is an important thing too. And we need to locate those in the appropriate locations. But equally important in addressing climate change is providing protection for landscapes that offer the opportunity to address some of the climate change benefits. And Aviquame, in my mind, is the number one number one action that we can take in Nevada for addressing climate change because of the connectivity issue.
Okay, Alan, I just want you to get spiritual with us for a minute. The Joshua trees behind you. Why are they so important? Why are they so magical? I mean, I was born and raised here, but I went to Aviquame with you and I got to see the Joshua trees, and it was so, it's hard to describe. People need to go down there. There's a hike on Sunday. Y'all should go. But those Joshua trees are just so spectacular and so beautiful. Why is it so magical, and why are those Joshua trees behind you so important?
Well, I guess it depends on the individual. I find it magical. Something about that landscape speaks to my soul. I go out there and it settles me. And, Joshua trees aren't doing well everywhere. I need to point that out. In California, the western species of the Joshua tree, there's an emergency listing for that under the California Endangered Species Act as a potential threatened species. So that study's going on, and we know that they're not doing well in areas around Joshua Tree National Park, partly from climate change and partly from pollution coming from the Los Angeles Valley. So we are fortunate here that this Joshua Tree forest within the proposed Aviquame landscape is healthy, by and large healthy. I mean, it's struggled a little bit with 24 years of drought, but with a little green up that we've had even in the last month, you can see that system coming back to life. And so we need to protect that. Joshua trees are incredibly important. They're the kind of the show species of the Mojave Desert, like the saguaro is for the Sonoran Desert. So, this is just a piece of that landscape. And I think you mentioned that we found Nevada's largest Joshua tree within that Aviquame landscape. And so, and I'm pretty certain that's not the largest. I think there's larger ones out there. It just happened that one that we got measured was right along the backcountry road that borders Wheathump Wilderness area.
Thank you for that. I couldn't agree more. I think Joshua they're the most magical. So much so I might even get a tattoo of them one day. Dwight, I want to bring you back in. I want to talk about getting community members involved to lift up Indigenous voices, and what are the best ways, not just on Public Lands Day, but all the time, to ensure that we're lifting up all of our Indigenous communities. And I will note, because I saw it in the chat from my dear friend of the show, Taylor Patterson, there are 28 federally recognized tribes in Nevada. So I misspoke. I apologize. So what are the best ways, Dwight, to lift up those voices of all of those tribal communities all across our state?
So I think, it's a big deal to listen to these communities, because I think one report stated that 80% of tribal members stated that they were aware of, the direct impacts of climate change because it affects them on a daily basis, and then 93% were wanting to actually, fight against it. Actually, we're actually providing some kind of defense against this. And another report said that I believe 36% of the forest landscapes that are intact are actually on Indigenous land. So obviously these are people that really care about these areas. These are people that truly hold it up and hold it into a special. It's not just an area, it's a living thing to us. It's a thing that must be protected and must be cared for, because it is caring for us and it is helping us. So some things that you can do is you can start by going to the NVAN website. NVAN website, we have a couple of different kind of initiatives that we want to see getting more attention. Like Aviquame, we want to get that protected, as well as Pahimaha. We're trying to get that a little bit more attention, a little bit more protection. And you need to really listen to the people that know the land, that have cared for the land, and that want to see the land prosper, not just for us, but for everyone. And it's really important that you continue to uplift those voices, because we are not always heard in a way that we should be, and we are not always taken as serious as we should be. So if you really care about the environment, talk to the people that deal with it on a daily basis, learn what you can do from them, learn what you can do from different Native organizations and tribes and what they need help with, and use your voice to support them. Don't just listen and nod and be like, well, that was that. I feel better now having talked to a Native, but I'm gonna go on about my day. Like that was nice to hear, but I got other things to do, because we're not just doing this for us, we're doing it for everyone. So be sure to pay attention. And if you do truly pay attention, you will learn what you can do to not just help us, but help everyone, especially the land.
So speaking of that, I want to ask you about your thoughts around the impact of the federal oil and gas leasing, the federal oil and gas leasing on Indigenous lands, but also, there's problematic mining situations that are happening, not just here in Nevada, but all across the West on Indigenous lands. Talk to us about those extractive industries and how they are impacting Indigenous people.
So first of all, I'm going to start with the name again, leasing. If you destroy anything anywhere else that you're leasing, you are held very accountable to it. But here, you destroy the land, and they're like, it's not leasing, it's a destruction of it. It's not something that you can come back from. So with Natives in particular, again, this is something that we are routinely faced with in a way higher number than any other community. Take Mexico, for example. New Mexico, for example, like I was just looking at some of the things that they were dealing with, and 91% of the public lands leased to oil and gas are concentrated around the Navajo communities there. So you have them dealing with the negative effects of that these things, produce, such as the toxic pollutants that they put in the air, which causes cancer, respiratory illness, and then cardiovascular diseases. And that is already affecting a community that has been systematically oppressed from the beginning. So they lack resources to any kind of adequate healthcare, transportation, housing. They are the number one group that has to deal with the poverty and job loss. So it's just, compounding all these problems and hurting people more and more. And when we talk about these oil and gas fields, we also need to acknowledge the people that it brings. So with that, it is routinely seen that you'll see a spike in MMIW cases, which is missing, murdered, Indigenous, and Two-Spirit people. They are in a very much higher danger than any other group of women or any other group of anything in this country. They are assaulted and go missing and just get hurt at a much higher rate. And when you bring in these oil camps and all these transient workers, it has been seen and proven time and time again that this just causes so much pain to everybody, especially the women and the Two-Spirit people. So you definitely need to take into account that when you are hurting this land and you are putting these people in this position, they will use that power against the people around there too. So I honestly see no real positives to it. It hurts everything that's sacred to us. It hurts our bodies. It hurts our land. And there are so many issues that need to be resolved with it. Because it seems like, just look at the big one that we just had with the DAPL pipeline. It caused so much pain and it caused so much trauma, and it brought up so much more for Natives on that land. And all of that was compounded by the fact that a lot of it was happening on Thanksgiving, So these are repeated patterns that you need to recognize in order to stop, but they have not been recognized and taken care of as they should have yet. So I would definitely encourage people to really think about how much these these things are hurting the land, and not just the land, but the people. And it is a huge number that needs to be stopped.
Thank you for that, Dwight. And thank you for sharing that. Angie, I want to come back to you. Can you explain the process of buying federal land in Nevada and how that money gets put back into our schools and our recreation areas and things like that? It's called SNPLMA. It's a fancy acronym for the Southern Nevada Land Management Act. It was put into place by Senator Harry Reid so that when the federal lands were sold off, they could be used, the monies could be used to invest again in Southern Nevada. So explain that process and what that looks like.
Okay. It is an incredible law. It's a wondrous thing that had such foresight for the Las Vegas Valley. What the law does, it allows the Bureau of Land Management to sell public land within a specific boundary around the Las Vegas, Nevada area. The revenue then that's derived from the land sales is split between the State of Nevada General Education Fund. They get 5%. The Southern Nevada Water Authority gets 10%. And then a special account has been created for the Secretary of Interior. The Secretary of Interior then has the ability to be able to provide funding sort of through a grant process. It's competitive, but several counties, well, the county, cities, everybody in this Las Vegas Valley, not everybody, but you know what I mean. People are, organizations, governments are able to compete for those dollars. And the categories are for, like you said, for parks, trails, and natural areas. They're for capital improvements, conservation initiatives, multi-species habitat conservation plan for Clark County, environmentally sensitive land acquisitions, hazardous fuel reductions of wildfire prevention, and also included in there is the Eastern Nevada Landscape Restoration Project and the Lake Tahoe Restoration Project. So what happens is that BLM has a staff here in my office who's solely dedicated to this application process, I'll call it. And they have rounds. Right now, we're currently in round 19, waiting for Secretary of Interior approval for those. But when you apply for those dollars, we have an executive committee that reviews those, nominates certain projects, and then they go up to the Secretary of Interior. Once those are approved by the Secretary of Interior, then the staff in my office then starts to work on the administrative process for that to be able to distribute the funds for every project. And what they do is they track each project. So there's you'll see throughout the Las Vegas Valley, you'll see parks that were created through SNPLMA. There is land acquisitions, so many things. Trails, we have the Legacy Trail that's going to be going through Red Rock is partly funded through SNPLMA. The Sloan new visitor contact station is designed and will be constructed through SNPLMA. So SNPLMA, wondrous. It is a wondrous law.
It is. And the park we normally do Public Lands Day at, which is Mountains Edge Regional Park, that was created by SNPLMA. It's literally right outside my door at my house. And so it's so cool to see the things that we get to work on every single day having an impact on our communities. So I agree, Angie. I think it's one of the coolest laws. Before we wrap tonight, I want to ask you one more question. And this is about the changes that the Biden administration has made in terms of the BLM and working with tribal nations and other stakeholders. Dwight was just making such incredibly important points about working with the Indigenous community, listening to the Indigenous community, not abusing the lands of our Indigenous communities. So what has the Biden administration done to change that relationship? And obviously it starts at the top with our fabulous Secretary of Interior.
Yes. And frankly, she's been out here several times since then on public lands, and it is wonderful to see someone that looks like me. But I'll say I've been here in BLM Nevada for 2 years, and I am so impressed by our state director's guidance, even prior to the change in administration, to form relationships with tribes. This has been the easiest unit that I've ever worked on with the two agencies that I've worked for, the Forest Service and the Bureau of Land Management, that my employees volunteer to provide assistance for tribal events. And my managers are very, very willing to work closely with tribes on different projects throughout our public lands. And so I'm grateful for that, because that isn't an easy thing that just happens automatically. I'll tell you, I've been on units where I've had to fight and make the argument. But of course, I have the advantage because I'm in management. And for me, I have really geared my career to be able to manage my traditional lands. And so I've stayed in the Western United States for that reason. And for me, I think the administration currently is really trying to provide what it can to tribal nations in regard to public lands and having a voice. And so for me, it isn't just about even the administration. It's me having the support from my state director to be able to do the things that I do and have the conversations and have the relationships with tribes that I do. And it makes me feel good because I feel like I'm accomplishing that. But I also have a great love for, because I grew up in a rural area. I grew up in a community of 1,000 people, and I have a great love for rural communities too. And a lot of what Nevada is are very small rural communities. I mean, that's where I grew up, and I understand how hard it is for a young person to come from a small school and have to compete with those people that had much more resources than what we had in a small rural school. And for that, I have the ability now to try to make change. So that really works. That really works for me and for right now for the administration. So I'm happy for that.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that. And I'm glad to hear that the Nevada BLM is doing right. And that's a really great thing. And I appreciate all of the work that the BLM does to work with our Indigenous communities. So thank you. All right, I want to take a couple audience questions, if that's okay with you. I know we're over 6, but I really want to get to just a few because there's some good ones, and I think you'll be excited for them. So thank you all for sticking with us at home. If you are at home and you're watching and you have questions for our fabulous group of folks tonight, please put them in the chat. We want to hear from you. So thank you for sticking with us. Angie, the first question is for you. It's from friend of the show, Taylor Patterson, who runs NVAN. She asked, within Angie's career, has she seen a change in the way agencies cultivate diversity? So similar question to the one you just answered, but diversity overall.
I would say there is change. There is change, but truly for me, I truly believe that it is up to managers and management to be able to make change and to recruit diversity. We can create different, say, special projects or different ways how we hire, how we attract people. When I grew up, I didn't see people in my hometown as wildlife biologists or fire management officers or recreation specialists. You didn't see that in your community. But when one of the first positions I had, I saw that. I saw where my fire management officer's father was a state fire management officer, where my wildlife biologist was a third generation wildlife biologist. His grandfather was a biologist from the Forest Service, who then his father was a Bureau of Land Management wildlife biologist. But in my community, I didn't see that. And so it takes us to create something where even students from rural areas can come in and learn things like that. And they can learn that from us by us providing summer work to students that are over 18 that are going to college here in community college or to UNLV or to any state, any college in the state, that they can come and learn for us in the summertime doing a summer job. And so I think those kind of things can be created. And I really work hard to recruit young people. I have been a part of a tribal youth camp that is multi-agency and multi-tribe, trying to entice young people. Let us tell you what we do and how it interacts and how it joins in with your tribal culture. How Dwight was talking about how resources could be managed, through that tribal perspective. And that's what we do through this tribal camp is we will have a tribal elder that talks about forestry and fuels. And there's something called Paiute forestry, and they make that part of the curriculum for those students to learn because it is largely what our fuels program does now. And then we have a science-based agency fire management officer that talks about fire and the fuels program. So they kind of intertwine that way. So there's a lot of things that we can do to be able to recruit diversity. But it's really up to us. The bottom line is really up to the managers to figure something out to make something work well and to be able to go out. We have a large pool here of Latinos. I would like to see more of a emphasis put on that too in my office to be able to recruit. So just got to find different ways how to do it.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point, especially with the Latino community, because we know often communities of color don't have green spaces, don't have access to the same spaces other people do. And so we have to make sure that we're providing those opportunities to get people out onto our public lands. So.
Right. And so my office is just one last thing is.
Yeah, of course. No, keep going, Angie. You got this.
My office is going to start having meetings with Latino outdoors to try to do some recruitment there. We're going to try to get Latino families to come and recreate on public lands. So that's our goal.
Well, we are here to work with you on that. Anything you need, please use us as a resource, because I have many people on our team who care deeply, including myself, about this issue. And so please use us as a resource to work with all of our communities of color to get that done.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Of course. So, Russell, I want to come back to you. Will asks, how significant is the impact to animals from littering in Nevada's various public spaces, parks, national monuments, areas like that?
Well, yeah, I will first say that I trained as a wildlife biologist, but I am not a certified wildlife biologist, but I did work in the California Condor Recovery Program in Southern California. Seems like forever ago. and microtrash is one of the leading causes for offspring death. So obviously we don't have any condors in Nevada, but we do have a lot of bird species that have similar feeding patterns as condors, turkey vultures, golden eagles, bald eagles, anything that would scavenge and then feed that to their young. So when they see, microtrash that Angie pointed out to earlier on in this session, those birds pick those up because they're shiny and then feed it because they think they're bone chips or what have you, and then feed it to their offspring still in the nest. And then a lot of times their offspring will become a choking hazard, or their stomach will just fill up with all these bottle caps and paper clips and all these little things. So I don't know of any studies that have shown microtrash being a cause of death here in Nevada, but certainly it has been documented in other states, and I would assume happens here in Nevada as well.
Absolutely. And for those of you who have not read up on what they did in California with the condors, in my natural resource policy at UNLV, my natural resource policy class, I should say, at UNLV with Dr. Parker, it was one of the coolest things I've ever read about in terms of conservation. So look it up if you don't know what Russell's talking about. Last question, and this is for all of you. Dwight, I'm going to start with you. This question comes from Amber up in Northern Nevada, and she asks, and this is for each of you, what is your favorite memory of Public Lands Day or just public lands in general?
So I think my favorite memory of public lands, it would be I kind of grew up around Arizona, kind of traveling back and forth between there. And it just has some land that is unlike anything, anywhere else. Like just walking around there. My grandma had a cabin in a reservation around there, and just getting to be able to just explore that wooded area, and then going from there to a desert, and then just seeing the various different life forms and the different kind of ways that it is different but interacts with itself, and all the different animals. It's really special. So it really formed good memories for me, and it is one reason why I still love Arizona and New Mexico and all that land to this day. It's beautiful. It's really amazing to see just how well it can take care of itself and how well it can take care of us, if we do the same. So I do really love that land.
100%. I couldn't agree more. Russell, same question. What is your favorite public lands memory or Public Lands Day memory?
I can probably offer a Public Lands Day memory, and it happened back in 2019 north of Elko. I was driving across the state and needed to find somewhere to camp north of Elko for the night. And so it kind of just took a little mini adventure, drove 3 hours up in the Drawbridge Wilderness area, and pulled over and truck camped and hiked up to the top of the peak that morning and was able to find mule deer and elk, and the elk were bugling. And if you've never heard an elk bugle in the wilderness or on any land, it's pretty impressive and pretty awe-inspiring. And that happened on Public Lands Day. So that was certainly a memory I look back on every time this comes up in September.
That's awesome. Yeah, elk are amazing. So I bet that was spectacular. And also that area is just so gorgeous. Angie, same question for you. Favorite Public Lands Day memory or just public lands in general?
I'm going to tell you about this great thing that happened to me. And I was, if any of you know, I was on my way traveling to Flagstaff, Arizona, and I was coming off the Kaibab Plateau, Kaibab National Forest, going down into House Rock Valley, which is very near, if any of you have ever seen the Wave. I was about a stone's throw from the Wave on the highway, and as we were driving down, going through from the forest, it was spring, and the the Globe Mellow made the whole valley floor orange. And it was the coolest, beautifulest thing. But at the same time, it was raining. And it was the first time I had seen lightning hit the ground. It hit and made a big silver ball and then moved, hit again on the valley floor in those Globe Mellow, and did it one more time. It was the most amazing thing I've ever seen. And that was on the Arizona Strip Bureau 1 management lines, right there, near, right, like I said, stone's throw from the wave. So beautiful. The Vermilion Cliffs, and, it was beautiful.
That sounds magical. Thank you for sharing that. Alan, same question for you. Favorite Public Lands Day memory, or just public lands in general? I know you have some special ones.
Yeah, I'd have to go back to the first time, and this was a decade or so ago, when I spent a quality time out on the public lands. When I say quality time, I'm talking about 3 days, and doing it as a fast and respecting, I guess, the sacredness of the landscape. And during that time, I journaled a whole journal, and this entity came through me that called itself the grandfather. And the grandfather is still with me today. He talks in different languages, and he offers prayers and blessings and such for different occasions. So I didn't know where that came from, or why it came from, or what it was all about, but it's really a special part of who I am.
Well, I am honored that you shared that story publicly with us. I know you don't share it often. So thank you for sharing that, Alan, because I know what a special and important story that is for you, because you shared it with us out at Eviquame. So I'm honored. So thank you for sharing that. I think for me, my favorite story is, my husband and I love public lands. He is a national park freak. We call him a national park geek. We have been to, at this point, 26 national parks all across the United States. And for his birthday every year, Nick and I go on an adventure, a driving adventure, where we go to multiple national parks. Last year, for his 40th birthday, we did all 9 national parks, well, 8.5, but there are 9 national parks in California, and we got to all of them in a week. This year for his birthday, we did the entire East Coast. We may have hit a deer while we were traversing the East Coast. But we have seen so many spectacular places all across the country. And so those are some of my favorite memories. If you've never been to Joshua Tree National Park, or Yosemite, or Yellowstone, or Redwoods. The Redwoods is one of my very, very favorite. It was just like a spiritual connection to those trees. Sequoia National Park, unbelievable. I've never gasped at a tree before, but Sequoia was like that. So if you have an opportunity to get out on your public lands, either this weekend or in the coming months, I would suggest that you do that. Also, you have some spectacular public lands in your own backyards if you live here in Nevada. One of my personal proudest moments of my career was getting Gold Butte National Monument designated as a national monument. And if you've never been to Gold Butte, it's spectacular. There are so many cool places out there. And one of my favorite Gold Butte memories was when we first got it designated, we went out to celebrate, and we were out on the red sand dunes, and we were barefoot, and all of a sudden this giant storm rolled in, and I got this picture over a Joshua tree, and the storm was just black, and it was coming right at us. And we hopped in the truck, and we often joke that it was the time that we almost died in Gold Butte, because there was a huge flood, but it was one of the most beautiful and magical adventures we've ever taken. And that all happened on our public land. And it's such a special and sacred place. And so I am honored to get to work on our public lands every single day and protecting them. I never thought in a million years when I started this work that public lands would be truly one of my top 2 issues that we get to work on. It's that and women's issues that are nearest and dearest to my heart. But now we're here, and I love our public lands. So I'm so honored to be able to do this program and to share Nevada Public Lands Day with all of you. So I want to bring in Allison. She is our grand finale tonight. She is our new organic content manager, but she has organized all of the festivities this week for Nevada Public Lands Day. She is organizing our big celebration on Saturday at Desert Breeze Park and our statewide press conference that we're having on Saturday at Desert Breeze. So Allison, come in and share what you're so excited about for your first Public Lands Day that you're organizing.
Hello, everybody. I'm Allison. As Annette said, this is my first time organizing an event, especially at this capacity. And I want to cordially invite all of you to come celebrate with us at Desert Breeze Park. We are going to kick off the morning at 9 a.m. with a park cleanup with Get Outdoors Nevada. Then we're going to head into some fun, celebrate kids. Thank you so much for supplying our life-size games. We're going to have football toss, baseball toss, life-size Jenga, life-size Connect 4. And we're also going to have a food truck. Grouchy John's, thank you so much for being a part of this with us this year. Everybody that joins us will receive whatever coffee of their choice and pastry of their choice. This is definitely something that you don't want to miss. We also are throwing a press conference that will begin at noon to 1. I'm super excited to announce all of our speakers. We will have Congresswoman Dina Titus, Congresswoman Susie Lee, Assemblywoman Brittany Miller, and Jennifer Lopez, who will be filling in for Senator Rosen. I hope to see you all there. We are going to bump the RSVP in the chat. So go ahead and RSVP. We would love to have you there.
Absolutely. And big shout out to Commissioner Justin Jones for sponsoring us. He will also be at the press conference. And so will Commissioner Michael Naft. And they've also designated it Public Lands Day in Clark County. So we're super excited to have all of them. And again, big thank you to Commissioner Jones for hosting the event again this year for us. So with that, I want to wish all of you a very happy National Public Lands Day, Nevada Public Lands Day, and get out there and recreate on your public lands this weekend. It's a great time to go see all of the spectacular places in Nevada that we call home. And again, please do your homework and your research on the land that you live on so that when you go out and celebrate responsibly on these important and sacred pieces of land, you know whose land it actually is. So I want to thank all of our speakers tonight for joining us and sharing their wisdom and their stories with us. And again, happy Nevada Public Lands Day. We hope to see you out there on Saturday with us. Stay safe and healthy, everyone. Have a great evening, and we'll be back out in front next week on Thursday at 5 p.m. talking about gun violence. Have a great evening, everyone.